Welcome to Mr. Windsor Teaches Latin Literature. Today we're going to be examining Ovid Dipsas the Sorceress from his book Amores, specifically 1.8. In this part of the story, Ovid has just returned from seeing his mistress. Upon listening at his mistress's doorstep, he overhears a conversation between his mistress and the brothel keeper Dipsas. Dipsas has convinced his mistress to leave him for a much wealthier man. Ovid is suitably irate at the prospect and directs all of his anger, fairly or unfairly, towards the character of Dipsas herself, who is an old woman who is made out to be a dangerous and very powerful sorceress. In directing all of his anger towards Dipsas, Ovid, or rather Ovid's character, sidesteps the idea of having to take any of the blame himself. Rather than thinking he is in any way deficient, he instead levels the blame at Dipsas, giving her all sorts of superhuman powers in order to give credence to the idea that she is the one who is manipulating his mistress into leaving him. So let's get some information about the author himself. This is Publius Ovidius Naso, or as he's known to us, Ovid. Now, Ovid was famous for writing love poetry. They were often controversial, raunchy, or against the Augustan norms of modesty or chastity. Famously, Ovid is supposed to have been expelled from Rome for carmen et error, which means a poem and a mistake. We can see why his poem or his poems may have landed him in trouble, but we still, as historians, don't know what that mistake was. There were some rumours circulating that Ovid attempted to seduce Augustus's daughter, and perhaps this is what had him expelled from the city of Rome. As we look through and analyse Ovid's work, I'm going to be using a certain code to draw your attention to certain aspects of the language that is being used. If something is in red, it means I want to draw your attention to the word order. If it's in green, I want to draw your attention to the content and the use of vocabulary of the author. If it's in blue, it's something to do with sound. And if it's in purple, it's something to do with a literary device that is in use in that section. So the first part of Ovid's Dipsas the Sorceress goes, Esquaedam quicumque volet cognoscere lenam audiat, esquaedam nomine Dipsas anus. Which means there is a certain, whoever wants to know about a brothel keeper, let him listen, there is a certain old woman by the name of Dipsas. The first notable aspect of this is that Ovid's character dives in with a false start, with esquaedam, and a conversational tone. You can almost imagine sitting at a bar with Ovid after the events he describes, as he tells you the story of what happened to him when he went to go and see his mistress and the events that unfolded. Perhaps he has had a few drinks already, hence the false start on his first line. Also, the key thing here is he starts with the character assassination of Dipsas right away, already naming her as an old woman and a brothel keeper. He goes on to say, ex re nomen habet, which means her name comes from fact. Now, Dipsas means drunk in Greek, and so already he's continuing his character assassination, and he has gone in with a savage insult. The second piece of character assassination in a very, very short space of time, about 1 to 3 lines have already happened, and he's already put in 2 or 3 insults. In no time at all, Ovid has revealed 2 stereotypes. Witches are old and female, and the second stereotype is that they are always drunk. Ovid then continues to discuss how drunk this person is. Nigri non illa parente memnonis in roseis vidit equis, which means she has never seen that parent of black Memnon on rosy horses sober. The first thing to note is that Ovid has put in an extended metaphor to emphasize just how drunk Dipsas is. Dawn is personified in Roman mythology and is associated with a pink, rosy colour. So he's personified Dawn here, and what Ovid is trying to get at is that she has never seen the dawn while not being drunk. He goes on, Inque caput liquidas arte recurvat aquas. He goes on to mention all the various skills that Dipsas has. Not only is she elderly, not only is she drunk, not only is she a brothel keeper, but she has incredible power over the natural world. Inque caput liquidas arte recurvat aquas, which means she curves back the running waters to their source by her art. So he uses a hyperbaton here, separating liquidas with the noun that it describes, the aquas, the running waters. He emphasizes Dipsas's power over the natural world and the ability to reverse nature. She can turn back running rivers back to their source, which makes Dipsas a terrifying adversary to have. It also removes any responsibility of Ovid for being the sort of man that a mistress might break up with, and it puts all the blame at Dipsas's door instead. Ovid then goes on to emphasize the skills and enumerate the pieces of knowledge that Dipsas actually has, which makes her so powerful. Scit bene quid gramen, quid toto consita rombolecia, quid valeat viris amantis equae, which means she knows well what power the herbs have, or the moving threads on a whirling wheel, or the fluid of a mare in heat. So there is anaphora here, the repetition of quid at the beginning of successive clauses. We also have a tricolon, a list of 3. 3 has always had a great relevance in terms of magic and superstition. That's strengthened by the anaphora, means that Ovid is emphasizing the sheer level of knowledge and skill that Dipsas possesses. It creates a forceful expression that emphasizes the extent of Dipsas's power and knowledge. So Ovid continues, cum voluit toto glomeranta nubile caelo, cum voluit pura fulget in orbe dies. When she wants, all the clouds are gathered in the sky. When she wants, the day shines in a clear sky. So first of all, we've got the anaphora, the repetition of cum voluit at the beginning of successive clauses. He also uses the opposites, the idea of the cloudy sky versus the sunny sky with no clouds in sight, in a clear sky. Both of these emphasize the level of Dipsas's control over nature. At her whim, she is able to alter the weather. So, of course, Ovid goes even further with his tirade against Dipsas. He says, sanguine siqua fidas tilantia sidera vidi, purpureas lunae sanguine vultus erat. I have seen, if you can believe it, stars dripping with blood, and the face of the moon was scarlet with blood. It's interesting that Ovid adds the aside si qua fides, almost like he's speaking to an audience while relating his story and this collection of rumours about the supposed sorceress Dipsas. We also have some sibilants in there, the repetition of the S sounds, the spooky sibilants of sanguine si stellantia sidera. Also, the repetition of the word sanguine, meaning blood, strongly conveys a sense of violence. Dipsas's powers in this are not just limited to things that she is able to do on Earth, such as reversing the flow of rivers, but also she is able to affect celestial bodies as well, such as the stars and the moon. But the character assassination isn't over yet. Ovid continues. Hanc ego nocturnas versam volitare per umbras suspicore, pluma corpus anile tegi. I suspect that she flies through the nocturnal shades with feathers covering her old woman's body. So he uses hyperbaton here, separating the adjective nocturnas from the noun it describes, umbras. Also the fact that he suspects. There's no evidence for what he claims. He's being intentionally offensive, assassinating the character of Dipsas the Sorceress. There's no evidence for any of this, and it seems like a lot of it he's just pulling off the top of his head. So not only is Dipsas able to reverse rivers, to make strange celestial phenomena happen, and have feathers all on her body like a mythical creature called the harpy, he goes on. Oculis quoque pupilla duplex fulminat. From her eyes, double pupils flash lightning. So not only is it very, very unusual to have double pupils in both eyes, but usually lightning is reserved only for the king of the gods, Jupiter. So at this point, it's very easy to see Ovid's attempt to remove any sort of responsibility for his breakup for himself. He's enumerating all the various skills that Dipsas has, because then he's able to say that through her skill, she is manipulating his mistress in the breakup. Not only can she reverse the direction of rivers, not only can she alter celestial phenomena, not only can she shoot lightning out of her eyes. Lightning was often a weapon reserved for Jupiter, the king of the gods. All of these point to her incredible power. But he's not done yet. He goes on. Evocat antiquis proavos atavosque sepulchris. She calls great-grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers from ancient tombs. So not only does she have this other host of supernatural, superhuman skills, but also she adds to that list of skills necromancy, power over the dead. Dipsas has dominion over the dead, which would usually be the wheelhouse of Pluto, Jupiter's brother. Also, there is a example of hyperbaton here. Antiquis is split from sepulchris. So it's split from the noun that it describes. Antiquis meaning ancient, sepulchris meaning tombs. Again, this emphasizes Dipsas's extensive powers. So she has knowledge of herbs, magical items. She knows how to brew potions with strange liquids. She has the power of Jupiter with the lightning bolts from her eyes. She has the power of Pluto to raise the dead. And finally, et solidam longo carmine findit humum, and split open the solid ground with a long spell. Dipsas has the power of Neptune, god of the sea, who is said to cause earthquakes. That was very much his wheelhouse. So she has all of these skills and also the powers of the big three, Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune. Again, Ovid uses hyperbaton here, splitting the noun from the adjective that describes it. Humum is split from solidam, humum meaning ground, solidam meaning solid. So again, this emphasizes Dipsas's extensive powers, and the word placement of solidam split from humum mirrors the split that Dipsas can supposedly cause in the ground. So what's Ovid actually trying to get at with this piece of poetry? Yes, it's easy to find some sort of superficial meaning to it, the character assassination of Dipsas the Sorceress, and revealing a lot of the stereotypes that Romans might have felt towards, first of all, women, secondly, older women. And the thing is with some of these stereotypes as well is that they must have existed to some extent, otherwise the jokes that Ovid is putting in there would not have landed for a Roman audience. This is an attitude that pervades the rest of history, and although jokingly here, will probably go on to contribute to views to do with witches, resulting in things like the Salem witch trials in America in the 16 and 1700s. But what is Ovid actually getting at with his piece of poetry here? Well, Ovid is known mostly for his love poetry, and in this section he plays on the theme of unrequited love. His love is not returned by his mistress, who is breaking up with him for a richer man. Rather than having to accept that he is in any way deficient or not good enough for his lover, he prefers to heap the blame on Dipsas, citing her magical powers. If he can blame Dipsas and her sorcery for the girl changing her mind, he does not have to accept that it is anything to do with him being lacking. It is simply Dipsas's extraordinary power manipulating the girl. However, we can see Ovid as being ironic in giving Dipsas over-the-top powers such as shape-shifting, manipulating nature, necromancy, to name a few. It becomes just that, totally unbelievable. We're not to believe here that Ovid is being genuine and that he genuinely believes that Dipsas has all of these powers. And so the resulting assumption must go that perhaps Ovid, to some degree, is accepting some responsibility for this loss of his mistress, and this is all just an ironic play on that theme instead. In doing so, Ovid reveals some stereotypes about women which pervade later history. They are sometimes believed to have supernatural powers to make up their loss of youth, and with it their sexual power over men. Therefore, they regain magical power over men instead. As women age, they lose the allure that might in some way allow them to exert some power over men and their free will. And as a result, as they get older and they lose that power, they need something else in order to control their menfolk. Obviously a very unpopular opinion with modern observers, but it does reveal a lot of stereotypes about women from Ovid's time, but also gives a sense that Ovid isn't particularly serious about the supernatural. In fact, he uses it to roundly be ironic in this piece of literature. Okay, thank you everybody for listening to my video on Ovid Dipsas the Sorceress. Thank you and goodbye.